There was one man who stepped up and arrived early this morning at Ronald Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C., and then drove to Arlington Cemetery to mark this occasion. He's not representing the administration. He's not representing the executive branch of the federal government because he wasn't responsible for this disaster. But he is a former commander-in-chief, and he hopes to be your next commander-in-chief. President Donald Trump. So where's Joe Biden? You know, he took a week off after giving that speech at the Democratic National Convention. He was staying in a billionaire's house out in Santa Ynez, I think it was, or Ysidro or Santa Barbara, one of the Santas. It's not Claus. At a billionaire's vineyard out in California, something about staying in a rich person's house and getting favors and trips from them. I thought Supreme Court justices were supposed to be ruined for such things. Anyway, he spent a whole week out there not doing anything during the convention. But then yesterday, he immediately hopped on Air Force One and flew right back to the East Coast. Not to Washington, D.C. or to the White House or anything like that to get to work. No. He went right past D.C. to Rehoboth, Delaware, because the poor guy's got to go on vacation. He's exhausted.
President Biden today marking the anniversary. He's in Rehoboth on vacation this week. Guys?
Wasn't he just on vacation last week, Griff?
Yes, in California.
That was the California vacation. This is the Delaware vacation.
Okay, what vacation is he on next week?
We'll have to look into it. Not sure about that.
So he'll be in 3 months. He'll be on permanent vacation.
I
Well,
think
4
that's
months.
about right. All right.
Thank you so much,
He'll
Greg.
be a lame duck. But here's his.
Yeah. In fact, if you'd like the details, it was 35 days ago that Joe Biden announced that he would be stepping down from the ticket and he will no longer be the Democrat nominee for president. But of course, he assured you that he is fit as a fiddle, sharp as a tack, and on top of his game. And he's still absolutely fine to be commander-in-chief and the president of the United States. Absolutely no reason why he should step down from the White House and from the presidency. He's just removing himself from the campaign. That was 35 days ago. And over the course of those 35 days, he has spent 6 days in the White House. 6 days in the White House. And on those days, he really hasn't done much. He hasn't done much of anything. Now, you heard the very beginning of that, Griff Jenkins on Fox News talking about marking the anniversary. That's right. Today isn't just any day for Joe Biden to go on vacation. It's not just any day for Kamala Harris to literally have nothing on her official schedule as vice president of the United States. Today is the 3-year anniversary since 13 members of the United States military were killed in a terrorist attack at Abbey Gate in Afghanistan, a direct result of this administration's disastrous policies on the pullout of Afghanistan. And the president goes on vacation, and the vice president is on vacation. There is no one here to represent the executive branch of the federal government and the commander-in-chief that resulted in the deaths of these 13 service members. Well, I shouldn't say there wasn't anybody. There was one man who stepped up and arrived early this morning at Ronald Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C., and then drove to Arlington Cemetery to mark this occasion. He's not representing the administration. He's not representing the executive branch of the federal government because he wasn't responsible for this disaster. But he is a former commander-in-chief, and he hopes to be your next commander-in-chief. President Donald Trump went to Arlington.
Trump was at Arlington National Cemetery this morning on the third anniversary of the suicide bombing in Afghanistan that killed 13 U.S. service members. What kind of an issue is Trump using this on?
Well, look, this is a low-key way for Trump to highlight something that he considers to be one of the biggest failures of the Biden administration and something politically he hopes he can tie Kamala Harris to, the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan 3 years ago. Trump often highlights the death of those 13 service members at the bombing at Abbey Gate. He's done so again in a Truth Social post overnight. Obviously, this is a respectful appearance here at Arlington National Cemetery, but Trump views the Afghanistan withdrawal as a major foreign policy weakness for both President Biden and Vice President Harris. And, you know, the polling has shown that that was a point in which Joe Biden's popularity took a major hit, started to go down in that summer 3 years ago, didn't really recover. So this is the kind of thing that I expect you're going to see Donald Trump continue to try to highlight in ways both a little bit more subtle, like an appearance at Arlington, and a little bit more directly in his speeches and campaign trail appearances.
Far be it from me to add to the brilliant political analysis from the likes of this douchebag over at MSNBC, but could I just mention something that was sort of forgotten in that brilliant analysis? Oh, this is just a political way, low-key political way for Donald Trump to emphasize what he sees as the failures of the Biden-Harris administration on the Afghanistan pullout. This is really a calculation that Trump, yeah, okay, you may be right. You very well may be right. And this is all just a political calculation. Could I set that aside for a minute? Could I add one more point to your analysis there, pal? How about this? The memories of those 13 service members deserve somebody showing up, somebody of stature, somebody of gravitas, somebody in some sort of official government position to acknowledge their deaths 3 years later. The Gold Star families who still have not heard the names of their loved ones uttered publicly by President Joe Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris. The least those families, the parents and the wives deserve is to have somebody show up and pay their respects and represent our country and represent a grateful nation. How about that? How about we add that to the part of your analysis here? Oh, it's just about the election. No, maybe Donald Trump is also there because this needs to be done. Someone should be there. There's nothing stopping Joe Biden from being there. This is such a political calculation. Well, what's stopping Kamala Harris from being there politically? That would have actually negated whatever political benefit Donald Trump gets from this. And by the way, it would have been her duty to be there. Since the president is missing in action, AWOL, on vacation again, maybe she should actually, be the vice president and show up and give these families and give the memories of these 13 service members exactly what they deserve. Respect. Joe Biden wasn't there. Kamala Harris wasn't there. Donald Trump was there.
Ready? Step. Treason! Out!
And while we're at it, what about Command Sergeant Major Tim Walz? America's dad. The whole reason he was brought onto this ticket is to shore up vulnerabilities of Kamala Harris because he served in the military, don't you know? A retired Command Sergeant Major, just ask him, how many times did he lie about that? Would have been low-hanging fruit for him to show up, right? Nowhere to be found. AWOL, all of them. It took Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, a man not responsible for the horrific deaths 3 years ago of these 13 service members, 11 members of the United States Marine Corps, 1 member of the United States Navy, and 1 member of the United States Army. They all died in that horrific terrorist attack because of Joe Biden, because of Kamala Harris, and they can't even bother to show up today. Even for the pure politics of it, they couldn't bother to show up. That's an American leader. That's a commander-in-chief. And I assure you, the families of the fallen were happy, grateful to see Donald Trump show up. Frankly, given the choice, I think they'd prefer to see Donald Trump there than Joe Biden or Kamala Harris show up and exploit it. We've had quite a few people there at the scene grabbing home videos as well, and they're just as stirring. I want to share as many as I can with you. Here's one from just behind President Trump at those hallowed grounds. That, of course, the tomb of the unknown soldier before they laid the wreath. And this moment right here, where President Trump laid a bouquet of flowers at the actual headstone of one of the fallen, it was Staff Sergeant Ryan Noss, whose family could not make it there. And so a friend of the family actually called the Gold Star parents and put Donald Trump on the phone as he laid flowers at their son's headstone. And of course, you'll hear Democrats all over television tonight on MSNBC and CNN, and you may even see some elected leaders criticizing Donald Trump, saying that he's politicizing this moment, which is atrocious and despicable. But just remember, it would have been really easy for Kamala Harris to show up in her official duty as the vice president and do the same thing. But see, there's two reasons why she didn't do it. The first is she doesn't want to remind anybody of this debacle and the fact that she is directly associated with it. And number two, she doesn't want to remind anybody she's vice president. I mean, she's running against this administration. She's acting like Donald Trump is the incumbent. Forget about not wanting to remind anybody she was connected to Afghanistan and the deaths of these 13 service members. She doesn't even want anyone to realize that she has an official role with the United States government right now. She's running like an attorney general of California and an outsider. But she isn't. Not only is she the vice president of the United States, but because our president is debilitated right now, physically and mentally, and not even showing up for work, she is the de facto head of state. She's the de facto commander in chief. And let's not forget, when the original decision to pull out of Afghanistan was occurring, before the tragic events of August 26th, 2021, Kamala Harris would jump in front of a camera any opportunity she could have and say, you know, this was all me. I was the last person in the room with Joe Biden. This whole Afghanistan thing, I want credit for it. I want credit for Afghanistan.
President Biden always said that he wants you to be the last person in the room, particularly for big decisions, just as he was for President Obama. He just made a really big decision. Afghanistan.
Yes.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do.
Yeah. She feels super comfortable about the decision. That is until the morning of August 26th, when reports came back that there was some sort of explosion and some sort of potential terror activity at Abbey Gate near the airport in Kabul. And it appeared as though there were service members at best trapped and unable to get out, and at worst dead from the explosion. Then Vice President Kamala Harris was caught on the tarmac at Joint Base Andrews by media. And they hope to get her initial reaction of these horrific reports coming out of Afghanistan. Do you remember how she handled the situation? This is her big moment. The president is nowhere to be found, naturally. So here's Kamala Harris, the person who was the last one in the room with Joe Biden when this decision was made. And now it looks like there may have been a tragic terror attack against the members of our military. Let's get to Kamala Harris and see her in her first opportunity to act as a commander-in-chief in a deadly serious situation. How did she handle it?
What's your response to reports of Americans? Hold on. Slow down, everybody. I want to talk about two things. First, Afghanistan.
What is wrong with this person? What in the hell is wrong with this person? What's funny right now? The question shouted by the reporter is, what is your reaction to the reports out of Afghanistan? And what, she's unnerved because a reporter shouted a question at her. So what does she do? What is this, a fallen out of a coconut tree moment? Is this a I love yellow school buses moment, or a Venn diagram moment, or, oh, we love space. Space is such a great thing because of the vastness of space. What is wrong with her? This is how she conducts herself. People reveal to you exactly who they are at moments like this. And this is Kamala Harris, the woman who wants to be the commander-in-chief.
What's your response to reports of Americans? Hold on. Slow down, everybody. I want to talk about two things.
She laughs. She cackles. She cackles like a maniac. This is what we're up against. This is who she is. And let's not forget her boss. I mean, they finally found him on a beach somewhere as all this was going on. We learned the tragic news. We ended up transporting the sacred remains of these 13 fallen to the airbase in Dover, where we traditionally bring back the remains of fallen servicemen. And as those flag-draped caskets were being removed from the transport plane, there was President Joe Biden, the commander-in-chief, checking his watch. Checking his watch multiple times. You know, as we pause for a moment and reflect on the horrific loss of life that these 13 service members suffered 3 years ago today because of that man right there and his policies and his vice president. And as we reflect on and mourn for the families who have lost their loved one, let's let one of those family members have the last word. This is the Gold Star father of Marine Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz. As the Republican majority finally had a hearing about what went wrong at Abbey Gate, because Nancy Pelosi didn't do it for a year and a half. It wasn't until the Republicans got into the majority that they could actually have one hearing to find out what went wrong. No one from the Pentagon's been fired about this, except one colonel in the Marines who put out a Facebook video criticizing the leadership in the Pentagon. He got fired, but not the people who actually had this happen. We finally had our hearing. And here is Lance Corporal Schmidt's father speaking at the hearing about this event and about our commander-in-chief checking his watch.
Stateside. Well, I stood there on the tarmac watching you check your watch over and over again. All I wanted to do was shout out, "It's 2:30, asshole." But out of respect to the other grieving families, I bit my tongue once again. Well, as you could probably tell by now, I'm done biting my tongue.
And these families still have not had the dignity of this president of the United States or his vice president, the last woman in the room, when he made the decision that led to their deaths. They still have not had the dignity of those two mentioning, uttering the names of their fallen family members, their children, their husbands. They still haven't mentioned their names publicly. 2 State of the Union addresses later, Joe Biden couldn't stop and pivot and look up into the box and acknowledge any of these family members who are still grieving. Nope. Talks about Vladimir Zelensky a lot. He gets a lot of attention. And I think we even had family members of fallen Ukrainians from the Russia-Ukraine war honored at the State of the Union, but not this man. Not an American father, still grieving the needless death of his son. God bless you, Mr. Schmitz. Thank you for your sacrifice and your son's sacrifice, all of you. We deserve better. We saw better today at Arlington National Cemetery. And this November, we can fix it. We can get better.